Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you with another deck profile, and for today's video we're going to be covering Reacue-Ace. Now this is going to be a first timer for this channel, and as a result, we're basically just going to make this as basic as possible, just because while you can splash multiple engines into this deck, such as like Fiendsmith, Fire King, even still Snake Eyes, right? That doesn't mean you're going to always want to, especially now because we do have Airlifter back to 3, and the 3 Airlifter really does matter a lot, as it means that if you want to play like a pure Reacue-Ace deck such as this one, it is actually possible now. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into it. As always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup first, and because this is a pure Reacue-Ace deck, we're actually going to be playing 3 Reacue-Ace Hydrant. Now, I feel like if you're playing a, all-in with just the Reacue-Ace stuff, this should be an automatic 3 of, just because you basically want to have access to it as often as possible, right? Whether you're normal summoning it or just getting it off of like an emergency, for example, to bring it out from the deck. The entire deck quite literally revolves around you having access to Hydrant at some point. Now, if you're playing this with other engines, I can definitely see like an argument for wanting to play 2, maybe even 1 Hydrant, but because this is a pure deck, you definitely got to rock all 3 of them. And as for what it does, it just searches your deck for literally any Reacue-Ace monster besides Hydrant. And it has the added benefit where if you have like another Reacue-Ace monster on the field, they cannot target this card with like card effects. So it has like blanketed protection, so it's almost always going to resolve. Then next up, we're going to be playing 3 Reacue-Ace Impulse. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you like contribute this card from your hand or face up field, and then special summon a Reacue-Ace monster from your deck. And it has to be a machine, so that means you're either summoning your Hydrant or like any of your big guys. But with the recent unlimiting of Airlifter, this card is nowhere near as impactful. And then speaking of Airlifter, we're going to be playing 3 Reacue-Ace Airlifter. So it basically does the exact same thing as Impulse. However, its on summon effect is to search out like any of your Reacue-Ace spell cards. So if you, for example, don't have like a Hydrant, this card, just normal summon it, then you can add your emergency and then summon out the Hydrant or any of your other Reacue-Ace monsters. But not only that, it's also one of the few cards that basically just gives you access to your field spell, which you normally wouldn't be able to get to, as Turbulence is unable to set it because it doesn't go to the spell and trap card zone. So, this card, like the amount of difference that it makes in the deck is honestly just enormous. And yeah, it's a welcome addition to be able to play 3 of this card again. Then for the 2 of Reacue-Ace monsters, we're only playing 2 Turbulence. This is the one that you typically want to end your combos with, or as it's the one that sets all your spells and traps in your deck to your side of the field, right? So if this resolves, the game is basically over in most situations. The only way your opponent is beating you is if they have access to like multiple board wipes or something. So evenly matched, Duster, things of that nature, which do hurt this deck, but you're not typically going to be seeing them game 1, and you're honestly not seeing them a lot in a lot of people's side decks too. So your opponent, if they go second against you, is going to have a lot of trouble dealing with Turbulence resolving. So yeah, I got to play 2 Turbulence, and then we're also going to be playing 2 Reacue-Ace Preventer. So this is going to be your quick play Book of Moon, which is honestly super impactful right now, especially against decks like Ryziel. The only thing is you have to have like another Reacue-Ace monster on the field in order to activate this effect. And its secondary effect too allows you to have like a little bit more of a grind game, because when this card is sent to the graveyard, you can bring back any of your banished Reacue-Ace monsters and then special summon it to your side of the field. So Book of Moon plus a free resource is honestly just really invaluable. Then for the 1-ofs, we're just playing the 1-of Fire Attacker. This one, it's okay. Just when your opponent activates like a monster effect, you get to draw 2 cards and discard 1. So it allows you to thin through your deck and then like potentially draw into more hand traps to be able to stop your opponent from playing. And then the 1-of Fire Engine, which literally just special summons a level 4 or Reacue-Ace monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Honestly, pretty mediocre, but I still feel like it warrants a slot just because you're able to bring back key cards like your Impulse, for example, and then trigger its effects, and then you can tribute your Impulse or your Airlifter or whatever, and then just continue to like combo off during your opponent's turn. And with that, that's the Reacue-Ace lineup, and then we are accompanying this with some hand traps because this is a pure deck, as I've stated a million times already. So you basically need to pair it with something, but in this case, it won't be like an engine, it'll just be hand traps to try and stop your opponent from playing. So as a result, you got your 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Frame because it's a good card, 3 Droll Lockbird, which I'm a really big fan of just because Ryziel searches so much, and even though they're still able to establish a board, Droll is the type of card where it makes their boards at least like manageable, as opposed to where they'd be able to potentially set up like a detonator with 5 pops or whatever, because that card can do that for whatever reason. But yeah, 3 Droll, really good against Reacue. It's okay against Malice. You'd rather have something else in most situations. And then like when it comes to like Rogue or just tier 2 decks, Droll is pretty hit or miss. But you'll know if it's like a miss, so it'll be like an easy side out. But when it comes to Reacue, which is in my opinion, probably like the best deck in the current format right now. This card, it really does do so much in slowing them down. And then for the final hand trap, we're playing 3 Nibiru, the primal being. If people overextend, you nib them. Simple as that. And with that, that's the monster lineup. And now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion of the deck. Now, when it comes to the spell and traps, we're going to be starting off with the spell cards first, and we're of course going to be playing 3 Emergency. Now, this is going to be the only spell card that we actually main at 3, but, you know, it's really good, right? You special summon a Rescue-Ace monster from your deck, and then you're able to tribute a Rescue-Ace monster from your field or your hand. So even if you don't have like something, you're still going to be tributing the one that you summoned. So this is like a great tool of being able to just like get resources into your graveyard to be able to banish them, and then maybe at some point like bring back one of your like banished monsters or whatever, or you know, just filling up your graveyard with fodder does help somewhat. So I definitely got to play through this. This is quite literally the best of the Rescue-Ace spells that we do play. And that's why we played at 3, obviously. And then for the 2 ofs, just 2 triple tactics talent. Hand traps are still everywhere, so stealing monsters, ripping apart your opponent's hand, drawing 2 cards. I always say it's always really good, and this format just proves it even harder because this card is just phenomenal. And then that's it for the 2 ofs, and then for the 1 ofs, we play the 1 of Rescue. So this is either a monster reborn for your graveyard for your Rescue-Ace monsters, or if you have a Hydrant, you can basically treat it as like a shark cannon. And for those of you that don't know, that's a Sky Striker card that lets you banish a card out of your opponent's graveyard. But if you have 3 or more spells, you can reborn it. And the part that it copies is the reborn. So I probably could have made that shorter, but, you know, little history lesson for those of you that don't know what Striker does for whatever reason. But yeah, if you have the Hydrant, it basically becomes like a target that you can take your opponent's monsters. And, you know, your opponent's deck has a lot of really cool cards that you can take. So yeah, 1 rescue, perfectly fine. And then lastly, we play the 1 Rescue-Ace HQ, just because it allows you to shuffle back your resources and then draw a card, which, you know, if you're relying on cards like Turbulence to set all your spells and traps, what you typically do is like you burn them all during your opponent's turn, then you activate the Rescue-Ace HQ, you shuffle them back, and then you do it all over again, and then your opponent typically isn't going to have the resources to be able to fight you through all your back row twice. So yeah, the game is basically wrapped up once this card resolves. Then for just general consistency, we're playing the 1 reinforcement of the army because for whatever reason they decided to make Airlifter and Impulse Warriors instead of machines like everything else. But we're not complaining. We're playing the 1/1-for-1 as like a 4th copy of our Hydrant. Pot of Prosperity at 1, you know, it's limited, but it does help us dig through our deck a little bit more. And truth be told, you don't really need the extra deck for the most part. So you can very easily just banish 6 cards that you don't care about because there will be 6 cards, and then just go to town. And then lastly, the 1 Call by the Grave because it's Call by the Grave. And that's it for the spells. And then for the traps, we are playing 3 Infinite Impermanence to go with our other hand traps, especially Nibiru, even though there aren't really that many Omni Negates or anything anymore. You still have to sometimes deal with like Wave Hiking Caesar, so you know, just hold your nib when you have the imperm, obviously, and then just hit them when they like try to end their turn. And then you have the Extinguish and the Contain, just good Rescue-Ace traps that help you disrupt your opponent's plays. And with that, that's the main deck, 40 cards like always, and now we can finally move on to the extra deck. So we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different when it comes to the extra deck this time, because if I'm going to be honest with you guys, the extra deck for Rescue-Ace really doesn't matter. A lot of the time you're basically just winning off of your Turbulence resolving and then just going to town on your opponent during the follow-up. But even so, you basically just want to play like all the good cards, right? So you got like your IP Masquerena, your SP Little Knight, Promethean Princess, because this deck is all fire, and you can, you know, put cards on the board pretty easily. You know, you have your Link 1s in the form of Relinquished Anima just to punish your opponent for playing terribly with their zones. But for the most part, I guess like the only advice I would give you when building your extra deck, besides putting in like good cards, obviously, as stupid as that may sound, is you can actually do it in multiples, right? And this really shines through when you're playing like Pot of Prosperity, as if you have like multiple SP Little Knights, Promethean Princesses, IP Mascarenas, Animas, whatever, you can afford to banish them and then just like search your deck without like really losing anything. And then this is also really helpful when you get paired up against a deck like Kashtira, right? As Unicorn is going to rip your extra deck apart, so by making that, you're essentially going to be making it weaker by including multiple copies of all your best cards, particularly like the Little Knight and the Promethean Princess. Now you may be wondering, why do I play the Meteorologic Aggregate here, or like why am I showing it? And that's mainly for like when it comes to the side deck, right? As a lot of people are currently playing Ultimate Slayer, as it basically outs the entire Reziel board, and I just wanted the Aggregator here as like a slot to showcase that there are plenty of cards that you can take advantage of with it. So for example, right, you can play the Aggregator just to deal with the Exceed monsters. If you're playing against a Fusion deck, you could play cards like Garura to draw, or like Intis to pop another card. You can play Synchros. I'm not really sure if there's like a Synchro that floats in the graveyard, but you know, you have choices there. You're already playing a deck full of Link monsters, so it's not like you're going to be too hard pressed to deal with decks like Malice. You have so many different choices, and it's ultimately up to you to decide what you feel more comfortable with, or what you want to focus on more entirely. Like, what are your strengths and weaknesses as a player? Yeah, like, I don't really have any room to tell you what that is, just because this is one of those few decks where the extra deck, quite literally, as I said before, just does not matter. And I don't mean to say like it's completely irrelevant, because that's totally not true. You definitely have to pick some good cards. You can't just go with like 15 random cards and just attempt to like win a tournament or whatever. But yeah, with that, that's the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.